Hello and welcome to another AIC video. So today we're doing another showcase on an X200 series laptop. Now previously I did an X220, which in a lot of ways I feel is kind of the end of a generation or end of an era for ThinkPad with that 7-row keyboard, that little bit thicker of a profile. Then we had the X230, which introduced the new keyboard, and then the X240, which had such a terrible trackpad that I think anybody who owned one is glad to have forgotten it. And so now we're looking at the X250, which kind of has the design language that definitely carries on for quite a few years with several generations of ThinkPads. And the main difference between, say, an X250 and X240, other than obviously the generation of Core i processor, is that trackpad. As I mentioned, a lot of people are glad to forget it. It had no physical buttons outside the trackpad itself, and the drivers on it were just terrible. They were awful. And they definitely improved with the X250, though they're still not great. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But really what was introduced was this whole new platform. As you can see, it's significantly thinner and lighter than the previous generations of ThinkPads, and it has a new keyboard. It definitely is a step up in design for more of a new era. And the first thing that you'll see is that chiclet keyboard. So it definitely is a step away from the old design in the fact that it's no longer that 7-row. We've combined some buttons, shrunk those keycaps down. And I know when it first was launched, it really hit a chord with a lot of traditional ThinkPad users, and they were not happy. The forums were full of discussions about just how much they hated the new design before they even really gave it a chance. And I don't think that it's fair to hate on this keyboard as much as some people do. There's a lot to like about it. It actually is a very satisfying keyboard to type on. The feel, the overall texture, everything about it is pretty satisfying and a joy to work on. You are missing the extra row of keys, some of those dedicated bigger keys. It'd be nice to have those back, but in shrinking the keyboard a little bit, losing that row, we're able to have a much bigger trackpad that allowed for more functionality of the trackpad. And in a lot of ways, with more modern computing, that's a big thing. The old trackpad was too small. It just was too small, and it was missing a lot of features. And with more modern operating systems, more modern interfaces, a lot of web-based interfaces, things like that, having a functional trackpad is just so much more important. Now, my very first ThinkPad that I used for real work was a Lenovo Thinkpad W530. So in a lot of ways, this keyboard feels at home for me. It's what I expect out of a system. While there's some things I prefer about the older 7-row, this feels like home. It's familiar and always has been for me. And this keyboard is available with backlighting. This one has 3 levels of backlight. We have off, we have dim, and we have slightly less dim. It's not super bright, and the one thing that I wish it had, that I've had on other keyboards, is a timeout. So you can turn it on, and if you push a button, it will stay lit for up to, I think, 10 or 15 seconds after your last key press. The ThinkPad doesn't do that. It's either on or it's off, and every time you reboot the computer, it is back to that same mode. And I understand that especially if you're on battery, you want it off, save some battery life, but I wish it had that a little bit more functionality in the backlighting of the keyboard. One thing I do appreciate about the keyboard, a couple things. One is the arrow keys. They're all about the same size, and so the feel of them is good. A lot of keyboard manufacturers will shrink the up and down on there, so they're just tiny little bars with the left and right being significantly bigger. I find that to be very annoying, and it kind of puts your fingers in a weird position whenever you have to use those arrow keys. The other thing is a lot of manufacturers will put down the side, like your home and keys here, and I find that to be very annoying. They also have the power button as your uppermost right button. I've never been a fan of that. I don't like it. I wish they would stop doing that. The ThinkPad does have a separate power button that is outside of the keyboard, so you're less likely to accidentally hit it and either put your computer to sleep or even power it off by accident. Now, as mentioned, this is in a new chassis. The x240 brought a new chassis in that we see here in the x250 that again is brought all the way through to the x270. This chassis is thinner, lighter than the previous versions, while still providing a very solid feel to the laptop. It's very sturdy and with very little flex to the system. So, you get a very good feel of the laptop in general use, and it is a nice chassis while being thinner and lighter than the previous generations. Some of the benefits of this chassis is the bridged battery system. So in this system, we have a battery that's kind of here under the trackpad, and then you have a separate removable battery here at the back of the system. Go ahead and lift that up here. See the battery back here. And what that means is if you bring multiple external batteries with you, you can swap these out and still have your system running. It runs off the internal battery, and then you can swap this back. You can have bigger batteries, extended batteries back here that you can swap to. Not all of this chassis comes with that, so that is something that you wanted to check on. And if it doesn't come with it, it's really easy to add. You can buy them, they're fairly inexpensive, and add that bridged battery in. It also gives you 2 storage ports on it. It gives you a 2.5-inch bay on this particular model with a 2242 SSD that is just a SATA 3 on there. So you can have tiered storage, so you can have SSD and a hard drive, or you can have dual boot operating systems on there with their own dedicated storage. So some upgradability there, some nice features. Unfortunately, you do lose something in that you only have 1 RAM slot, where with the X220 you had 2. This only has 1 DDR3L, so low voltage. And the issue with that is, for the most part, 8 gigs per DIMM was the maximum. There are 16 gigs out there. Again, they're very expensive. You're looking at up to $120 per DIMM, which almost doubles the cost of the laptop, where 8 gigs are pretty readily available for that $20 mark. So fairly expensive upgrade to go to 16 gigs in this system, though it is doable, not something I'd recommend. Some other upgrades on the system, those USB ports are USB 3.0 or USB 3.1 Gen 1 or whatever it is. They're the original USB 3, so they have much higher transfer rates. We have wireless 5 gigahertz, so faster wireless speeds, a little bit more reliable wireless speeds. And there is an option to do a 1920 by 1080 on here screen. It's IPS. You get touch on here if you have one configured with touch. And that upgrade to that 1920 by 1080 IPS screen is pretty easy to do. I've done it on other laptops, and it is definitely a worthwhile upgrade. Not very expensive. Last one I did, I was able to pick up the panel for about $50 on Amazon. So I'll see if I can find a link to that if you're interested in doing that. Plenty of videos on the how-to, and I'll link to the product as well. In this system, we have a 15-watt Ultrabook processor. The previous X220 is a 35-watt unit, so this definitely generates less heat and uses less power than that previous generation. You can definitely tell even when doing a pretty heavy load on here for the GPU. It's not getting all that warm. The fan is spinning up, but it's not super loud, so it definitely keeps it nice and cool. It's not the most powerful CPU available, even in this generation of laptop. Again, it's an Ultrabook, so its focus is more on battery life than it is on actual performance. We got a little bit better fingerprint sensor on here as well. I like its location, I think, better than some of the other laptops here along the edge. I don't find it awkward to use at all, and it's a quick swipe, and it's very accurate for me when I use to unlock this laptop. You're also looking at slightly updated graphics on here as well, from the HD 3000 to the HD 5500. Internal graphics on this, this is not meant for gaming. It's not even really meant for very heavy graphical use in any sense of the term. What it really does is bring some more support in for DirectX 12. You get some higher resolutions with higher refresh rates available on this system. That's really what is being brought to the table with that updated graphics card. One of the big benefits of this laptop is its price point. So as I mentioned in the previous video, the X220 is starting to push that $200 range, even exceeding up to $250 range for a really nice condition one on the X220. You can still pick up an X250 for like 150 bucks. That is better than just about any new laptop I've reviewed in a while. I've been recommending these to family for forever as an option because of just how inexpensive they've been, especially compared to new laptops and their performance. So if you watch my channel for any length of time, I love small, inexpensive laptops. And recently their price for new ones has gone through the roof. Laptops I spent $150 on a year and a half, 2 years ago are now selling for almost $250 new. Where this you can still pick up for about 150 bucks. You get a pretty solid performing laptop with some great ability, pretty decent screen, keyboard, chassis, all that. It really is a good deal. And the price is bottoming out, I think, a little bit. I haven't seen them below that much unless you're willing to go with something that's a little bit more beat up. But a good condition one, like I said, about $150 to $200, which is less than a comparable X220, which is not as powerful of a system. So definitely an option, and why I continue to recommend them to people who are on a very strict budget for a new system. Now, are these laptops perfect? Absolutely not. So as I mentioned earlier, that RAM upgrade, there's only one slot, so you're limited to 8 gigs of memory. It is DDR3L, which is pretty common, pretty inexpensive, but you can't go much above that very easily. Also, the storage is limited to just SATA 3, 6.0 gigahertz. Pretty slow by today's standards, but SSD in here will be plenty snappy. And those 2242 SSDs, they're not super common anymore, especially the older SATA drive ones. You can find them as NVMe's, but those aren't compatible with this, so you need to find the SATA ones. They're a little bit more expensive than they should be for sure, just because they aren't as common, or they're not as in demand, and so they just aren't as common. Another small issue I have on this is the display out options. We have our VGA on here. It's getting to be pretty antiquated. Like I said, a couple years ago, I'd still say it was pretty relevant, but at least in my experience with work and home, everything, a lot of things are going away from that. People are finally able to upgrade displays and projectors, things like that nature, and so that VGA is a little obsolete. And then it has a mini display port, so not even a full-size display port, but a mini display port. My gripe with that is there are no native systems that use that, so you're going to have to either buy a specific cable or a dongle to use that port, which I just find to be annoying. I hate the idea of having to carry dongles with me to be able to use the ports on my laptop. That's personal preference, but it is definitely something that I find to be annoying. Another downfall of this laptop is the USB ports. There are just 2 now instead of 3, and they're on opposite sides of the laptop. The reason why that's a problem for me personally is that I have like external CD-ROM drives that require more power, so they have 2 ends to it that would plug into 2 USB ports right next to each other. Well, I can't do that with this because the ports are on opposite sides of the laptop, which means I have to get an extension, which is an adapter. So having 2 ports on different sides of the laptop, a little bit on the frustrating side of things with those ports. One is always on, which is nice, but again, on opposite sides. One thing, if you're looking to buy one of these laptops, I would highly recommend considering is one of these. This is a dock. It is a part 40A1. So that's the one you want that works with this laptop. And it is just a port replicator. So here on the back we have VGA, DVI, display port, your power in, your Ethernet, 3 USB ports that are type A's, 2 type 2's, and an always on, I believe, is also type 2 as well. And then when you come home, you just take your laptop, unplug it here, and it just clicks into place. I'm just doing this backwards, so a little awkward here. Lining that up. Let me do this forward so I can see. There we go. All right, it just plugs in. Nice thing about this is if the laptop was powered off, lid closed, there's a power button right here. You have your mouse, keyboard, Ethernet, display, everything plugged into this, power, and so you're not having to constantly plug those in and out. You're plugging directly into your ports directly, and you just, when you're ready to go, you just push the button and it pops off and you're ready to go again. These are really inexpensive, used on eBay, like 20 bucks. And a lot of times that even comes with the power adapter, the larger, like 170 watt power adapter. And so you can run more powerful USB drives off of here. And you're not having to always carry your power cord with you wherever you go, or move it, unplug it from underneath the desk or whatever. Probably my favorite feature is that you're not having to crawl around to unplug it, everything every time you need to go somewhere. So if you're thinking of buying one of these, pick one of these up as well. Highly recommended. The great thing about these is they match systems from the x240 all the way up through the x270, and of course some of the T series and some of those other laptops as well. So that is something you can use for those. Anyways, again, this is just a quick showcase of this x250 laptop. Definitely still to this day on my recommend list if you're looking to buy something inexpensive. But before you go out and purchase one, I'm going to recommend that you wait for my next video, because we're going to be talking about the x270, and I think that's worth watching. Anyways, if you have questions, thoughts, or comment, leave those down in the comment section down below. I will do my best to answer. Thank you for watching.